The morning light filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting long shadows across Geneva Walsh's dining table. At 68, her hands still moved with practiced precision as she arranged her teacup, saucer, and the morning paper, a ritual unchanged for 43 years. Only today the air felt different, heavier. "Mum, we need to talk about your living situation," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the comfortable silence. He stood beside his wife Isabel, both dressed in casual but expensive clothing that somehow seemed formal in Geneva's modest kitchen. Geneva looked up, her blue eyes, still sharp behind reading glasses, taking in her son's expression. There was a determination there that reminded her of his father. David had been gone for 3 years now, but sometimes she saw him so clearly in their son's face. "What about my living situation?" Geneva asked, though a flicker in her chest told her she already knew. Isabel stepped forward, her manicured hand resting on the back of a kitchen chair. "We've been looking at Sunrise Manor. It's a wonderful senior community, just 20 minutes from our house. They have activities, medical staff on site, and it would be more appropriate for someone your age," Marcus finished, his tone suggesting this was a conclusion rather than a suggestion. Geneva took a slow sip of her tea, letting the warmth spread through her chest. Outside her window, the maple tree she and David had planted 35 years ago swayed gently in the October breeze, its leaves a brilliant tapestry of crimson and gold. "I see," she said finally, setting down her cup with a soft clink against the saucer. "Mom, this house is too big for you now," Marcus continued, his confidence building with her apparent acquiescence. "The stairs are getting difficult, the maintenance is constant, and winter is coming. Remember how you slipped on the ice last year? It makes sense financially too," Isabel added. "The Boston housing market is excellent right now. This neighborhood has appreciated considerably." Geneva nodded, smoothing the edge of her napkin with one finger. "And what would happen to the proceeds from the house?" she asked, though she already knew the answer to this as well. Marcus shifted his weight. "Well, since we put the house in my name after Dad died, for estate planning purposes, we would handle that part. But all of it would go toward your care, of course." "Of course," Geneva echoed. She looked around the kitchen where she had raised her son, where she had nursed David through his final illness, where she had grieved and then, slowly, begun to live again. "When would you like me to decide?" "Actually," Isabel said, glancing at Marcus, "we've already put down a deposit to hold a unit. They're in high demand." "We're thinking next month would be ideal," Marcus added, "before the holidays." Geneva stood, gathering her teacup and saucer. "I understand," she said, her voice calm as still water. "I won't fight you on this." Relief flooded her son's face. "That's great, Mum. I promise you'll love it there." After they left, promising to return the following weekend with brochures and floor plans, Geneva sat alone at her kitchen table. She pulled out her tablet, a gift from Marcus 2 Christmases ago, intended to help her stay connected, and began to search. Not for senior living communities, but for beachfront apartments in Key West, Florida. Attorney Eleanor Kim's office overlooked Boston Harbor, the morning sun glinting off the water in diamond patterns. Geneva sat across from her, back straight, hands folded in her lap. "You're absolutely certain about this, Geneva?" Eleanor asked, peering over reading glasses nearly identical to Geneva's own. "More certain than I've been about anything in years," Geneva replied. Eleanor nodded, shuffling through the papers before her. "You've already transferred the house to Marcus's name, which simplifies some aspects and complicates others. But your financial assets, the investments, David's life insurance, your retirement accounts, these are all still in your control." $2,100,000 to be exact, Geneva said. "David was always good with money, conservative, but smart. And you want to move all of this to offshore accounts?" "Not offshore. That sounds like I'm doing something illegal. International. There's a difference." Geneva smiled slightly. "I've done my research, Eleanor. I want these funds moved to accounts that Marcus cannot access or influence." Eleanor leaned back in her chair, Geneva, I've been your family's attorney for 20 years. I have to ask, is everything all right between you and Marcus? Geneva gazed out at the harbor, watching a sailboat cut through the waves. My son is not a bad person, she said carefully, but he and Isabel have certain expectations about their financial future, expectations that involve my house and my money, and you don't wish to fulfill those expectations. I raised Marcus to stand on his own 2 feet. At 43, it's time he remembered that lesson. Geneva turned back to Eleanor. David left me well provided for because he wanted me to enjoy my remaining years, not to finance our son's lifestyle. Eleanor removed her glasses. The house transfer cannot be undone without Marcus's cooperation, but we can list it for sale with his name as the seller. The proceeds would go to him, technically, but I'll be handling the sale, Geneva finished. Marcus signed a power of attorney for the property when we transferred the title. He thought it was to make things easier for me. A hint of a smile touched Eleanor's lips. I remember preparing that document. I'd like to list the house immediately, discreetly, and I'll need assistance transferring my assets to accounts in my name only. Eleanor began making notes. And where will you be living, Geneva? Key West, Geneva replied, her voice taking on a warmth that had been absent before. I've found an apartment with an ocean view. I've always wanted to paint seascapes. Does Marcus know about any of this? Geneva picked up her handbag, a subtle signal that the meeting was concluding. Marcus and Isabel are going to the Berkshires this weekend. When they return, they'll discover I've taken their advice. I've found a place more appropriate for someone my age. Her eyes twinkled, just not the place they had in mind. The real estate agent had been surprised but cooperative when Geneva explained her situation. The house went on the market with a competitive price point, guaranteeing interest. By the time Marcus and Isabel left for their weekend in the Berkshires, Geneva had already accepted an offer of $465,000. The movers came on Saturday. Geneva had carefully sorted through 40 years of accumulation, selecting only what truly mattered. David's records, her art supplies, the quilt her mother had made, and enough clothing for her new life in a warmer climate. She left the furniture, kitchenware, and most of the household items. Marcus could decide what to do with them. On Sunday evening, Geneva sat at the gate in Logan Airport, her ticket to Key West in hand. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Just landed at Logan. Dinner at home tonight? We brought back some great local cheese. Geneva typed a simple reply. I've taken your advice. The key is under the mat. She turned off her phone as her flight began boarding. In Key West, Geneva's apartment waited for her. A small one-bedroom with a balcony overlooking the Atlantic. The rental agent met her with keys and a welcome basket of local fruits. The furnishings were simple but elegant, chosen from online catalogs with Eleanor's assistance. That first night, Geneva sat on her balcony watching the moon rise over the ocean. Her phone had buzzed repeatedly in her purse, but she left it there. Tomorrow would be soon enough to deal with the aftermath. Tonight was for herself, alone. She slept deeply that night, lulled by the sound of distant waves and the soft whir of the ceiling fan. For the first time in years, she didn't dream of David or worry about the empty spaces in her too large house. Instead, she dreamed of painting the sunrise. Back in Boston, Marcus and Isabel stood in the empty living room of Geneva's house, now Marcus's house, surrounded by furniture but little else of his mother's presence. She can't have just disappeared, Isabel said, pacing the hardwood floors. She's 68 years old. Marcus held a piece of paper, a simple note in his mother's precise handwriting. Marcus, you were right. It was time for me to find a place more appropriate for someone my age. I've decided on somewhere warm. The house has been sold for $465,000. As the legal owner, you'll receive the proceeds once the sale closes next week. I've left most of the furnishings for you to keep or dispose of as you see fit. I'll be in touch when I'm settled. Love, Mom. She sold our house, Marcus said, the paper trembling in his hand. Our house. Isabel stopped pacing. Call Eleanor Kim. She must know something. But Eleanor, bound by client confidentiality, would tell them nothing except that Geneva was safe, well, and acting of her own free will. It would be 3 days before Geneva finally answered her phone, speaking to Marcus from her balcony as the sun set over Key West. "Mom, what have you done?" Marcus demanded, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Exactly what you suggested," Geneva replied calmly. "I've found a more appropriate living situation. By disappearing? By selling my house? Your house?" Geneva's voice remained even. "Yes, legally it was yours. That's why you'll receive the proceeds from the sale. But we were counting on at least 700,000. The neighborhood appreciated considerably. Yes, Isabel mentioned that." Geneva watched a pelican dive into the waves below. "I priced it to sell quickly." "Mom, this is insane. Where are you? We'll come get you and figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out, Marcus. I'm 68, not 88. I'm not infirm or incapable. I've made my decision." "What about your savings, your investments, Dad's insurance money?" Geneva's hand tightened slightly on her phone. "My money is exactly where it should be, under my control." The silence that followed told Geneva everything she needed to know about her son's expectations. "Marcus," she said softly, "I raised you better than this. You've ruined everything," he whispered before hanging up. Geneva set down her phone and picked up her sketchbook. The sunset was particularly beautiful tonight, and she intended to capture it. 3 months passed in a blur of warm days and gentle nights. Geneva established a routine that centered on her art classes at the local community center, morning walks along the beach, and evenings on her balcony. She made friends. Lydia, a 72-year-old former literature professor, Carlos, a 65-year-old Cuban-American chef who taught cooking classes on Thursdays, and Beth, a 59-year-old widow who had also escaped a colder climate and well-meaning but controlling children. Geneva's phone calls with Marcus grew less frequent and more strained. From bits of conversation and the background noises during their calls, she pieced together that he and Isabel were struggling to adjust to their new financial reality. The house money had paid off some debts, but hadn't stretched as far as they'd hoped. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in February, Geneva received a text from Marcus that simply read, "Isabel left me." She called immediately, but he didn't answer. She tried again that evening, and finally, near midnight, he picked up. "She said she didn't sign up for this," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "Living in a one-bedroom apartment, cutting back on everything, no prospect of things getting better soon." Geneva closed her eyes, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and sorrow. "I'm sorry, Marcus." "Are you?" His laugh was bitter. "Isn't this what you wanted? To teach me a lesson?" "No," Geneva said firmly. "I wanted to live my life on my terms, not be tucked away in a place where you and Isabel wouldn't have to think about me except during scheduled visits. That's not fair. Neither was assuming my assets were yours to count on." Geneva softened her tone. "Marcus, your father and I raised you to be independent. Somewhere along the way, you forgot that." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken truths. "I don't know what to do now," Marcus finally admitted. "You begin again," Geneva said simply, "just like I did." After they hung up, Geneva sat on her balcony watching the stars. She thought of David and wondered what he would make of all this. He had always been gentle with Marcus, perhaps too gentle, but he had also believed in personal responsibility. "I think you'd understand," she whispered to the night sky. "I'm not abandoning him. I'm just refusing to enable him." The next morning, Geneva enrolled in an advanced painting class and signed up for volunteer work at the local Marine Conservation Center. At 68, she wasn't waiting to die. She was just beginning to truly live. 6 months after Isabel's departure, Geneva received an unexpected message from Marcus. "Can I come visit?" She sent back a simple yes and spent the next week in a state of nervous anticipation. She cleaned her already tidy apartment, bought fresh flowers for the small dining table, and stocked the refrigerator with foods Marcus had enjoyed as a child. When he stepped off the plane at Key West International Airport, Geneva almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the designer clothing and carefully styled hair. This Marcus wore khakis and a simple button-down shirt, his hair slightly longer and touched with new strands of grey at the temples. "You look well," she said as they embraced. He stepped back, studying her face. "So do you. Really well, actually. The sea air agrees with me." The drive to her apartment was filled with careful small talk. The flight, the weather, a new restaurant Geneva had discovered. It wasn't until they were settled on her balcony with glasses of iced tea that Marcus finally broached the subject that hung between them. "I'm sorry," he said, looking out at the ocean rather than at her. "I was entitled and selfish." Geneva watched a sailboat on the horizon. "Yes, you were." Marcus's laugh held genuine amusement. "Still not pulling any punches, are you? At my age, there's no time for anything but honesty." He nodded, turning to face her. "Isabel and I, we got caught up in appearances. The right house, the right cars, the right vacations. We were drowning in debt but couldn't admit it, even to ourselves." He took a deep breath. "When Dad died, we saw your assets as the solution to our problems. And me as a problem to be solved," Geneva added quietly. Marcus winced. "I didn't think of it that way then, but yes, I'm not proud of it." "What are you doing now? For work, I mean." "I'm teaching high school economics," he said, and for the first time since his arrival, his expression brightened. "Ironic, isn't it, given how badly I managed my own finances?" "Or perhaps perfect," Geneva suggested. "The best teachers are often those who understand the consequences of mistakes." They talked until the sun set, then ordered takeout from Geneva's favorite seafood restaurant. Marcus told her about his small apartment, his student loan refinancing plan, and his newfound interest in minimalism. Geneva shared stories about her art classes, her new friends, and her volunteer work. "You have a life here," Marcus said as they cleaned up after dinner. "A real life." "Did you think I wouldn't?" Geneva asked, curious rather than accusatory. "I think I didn't consider it at all," he admitted. "In my mind, you were just waiting. For what, I don't know." "That's the mistake many people make about aging," Geneva said. "They see it as an ending rather than a transformation." Later, as Marcus prepared to sleep on the pull-out sofa, he asked the question Geneva had been expecting. "Will you ever come back to Boston?" "To visit, certainly," she replied. "But this is my home now." "And your assets? The money Dad left you?" Geneva studied her son's face, searching for signs of the old entitlement. Finding none, she answered honestly, "It remains where it belongs. Securing my future and eventually funding causes your father and I believed in. There will be something for you, but not the windfall you once expected." Marcus nodded. "That's fair. More than fair, considering everything." As Geneva turned to go to her bedroom, Marcus called after her. "Mom, I'm proud of you." "I should have said that before." Geneva smiled. "Thank you. I'm beginning to be proud of you too." 1 year after her move to Key West, Geneva hosted a small gathering on her balcony to celebrate her 69th birthday. Carlos prepared paella, Lydia brought homemade sangria, and Beth decorated with fairy lights and tropical flowers. Marcus flew down for the weekend, bringing a gift, a professional quality set of watercolors he'd saved 3 months to afford. As the evening progressed, Geneva found herself sitting slightly apart from the group, watching her son laugh with her friends. The transformation in him over the past year had been remarkable. He spoke of his students with genuine enthusiasm, and when he mentioned dating again, a kindergarten teacher named Sophia, his eyes lit up in a way they never had when discussing Isabel. "Penny for your thoughts," Lydia said, joining Geneva with a fresh glass of sangria. "I was just thinking about how endings can become beginnings," Geneva replied. "A very literary observation," Lydia approved. "Your ending with Boston became your beginning here, and perhaps your son's ending with his wife became his beginning as a better man. Geneva nodded. When David died, I thought my life was essentially over, that I would just continue, marking time until I joined him. And now? Now I understand that even in autumn, new growth is possible. Geneva gestured toward her collection of paintings displayed along the apartment walls, seascapes, local architecture, portraits of her new friends. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. None of us are, Lydia said. That's the secret they don't tell you about aging. It's not about decline. It's about becoming more authentically yourself. Later, as the party wound down and her guests prepared to leave, Marcus pulled Geneva aside. I have some news, he said. I've been offered a position as department head for next year. It comes with a small raise. That's wonderful, Geneva said, genuinely pleased. I've also been thinking about going back to school myself, maybe a master's in education. Your father would be very proud of you, Geneva said. As am I. Marcus hesitated, then asked, would you consider helping with tuition? Not paying for it all, he added quickly. I've been saving, but maybe a loan? I'd repay it. Geneva studied her son's face, seeing not entitlement, but hope. Send me the program details, she said. We'll discuss it. After everyone had gone and Geneva was alone on her balcony, she took out her sketchbook and began drawing the night scene. The moon on the water, the distant lights of boats, the silhouette of palm trees against the sky. Her hands, spotted with age but steady as ever, moved with confidence across the paper. Tomorrow, she would start a new painting. Perhaps a portrait of Marcus, capturing this moment of transition in his life. Or maybe a self-portrait, something she had never attempted before. At 69, Geneva Walsh was discovering that life was still full of new beginnings, unexpected turns, and boundless possibilities. In the soft night air, with the sound of waves below and stars above, Geneva felt David's presence, not as a ghost or memory, but as the foundation that had helped her become the woman she now was, strong, independent, alive in every sense of the word. Thank you, she whispered, to David and to the universe that had given her this golden autumn of her life. She closed her sketchbook and went inside, leaving the balcony doors open to let in the sea breeze. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new challenges, new joys, and Geneva Walsh was ready for all of them. If you enjoyed this journey with Geneva and Marcus, please subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us it's never too late to begin again. Don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below.